Agility and ingenuity are at the core of ASIO's operations. We go up against sophisticated foreign intelligence and sophisticated adversaries that are effectively unconstrained by law, resource and ethics. We need to out-imagine and out-manoeuvre them. We go up against extremists who are security-aware and tech-savvy. We need to be able to know what they are plotting and see what they are doing, and always lawfully, of course. So ASIO officers are expected to do extraordinary things, but it's really important to know that they're ordinary people. At work, they will routinely do things that you and our targets think are impossible. But after work, like the rest of us, they face the same challenges, worries and duties that we all have. They're your neighbours, they're your friends, they're members of your community, they pay mortgages, they coach sporting teams, they care for loved ones, and volunteer to fight fires and patrol beaches. Our people include former nurses, teachers, tradies, musicians, and engineers, and yes, even journalists. We've got a few of those, just saying. Similar profession, actually. Before I talk about Australia's current and future security environment, I'd like to look back on 2020. Like all organisations everywhere, ASIO was affected by COVID-19. Despite these challenges that we all faced, we maintained our hold on high priority targets. We kept up with the threat landscape that was shaped by the pandemic, and we reduced harm. We protected Australia and Australians from threats to their security. And these threats continue. For those intent on violence, more time at home online meant more time in the echo chamber of the internet on the pathway to radicalisation. There, they were able to access hate-filled manifestos and attack instructions without some of the usual circuit breakers that you get with contact with the community. Extreme right-wing propaganda used COVID to portray governments as oppressors and globalisation, multiculturalism and democracy as flawed and failing. Islamic extremist narratives portrayed the pandemic as divine retribution against the West for perceived persecution of Muslims. For foreign spies, the lack of international travel and reduced social mobility meant their tradecraft evolved. They increased their online activity and approaches. And as our targets changed their modus operandi in response to COVID, we too adapted our methods and approaches. That's a defining feature of ASIO. We adapt quickly because our success and your security depends on it. We're continually innovating and changing tact where we need to and pushing right to the edge of what is possible. We have to stay ahead of terrorists and spies because if our targets know we can do something, we have to be able to do something else. This might seem like the original impossible task, but with the right capabilities and investment, I can assure you our people are up to it. And this will be critical as we all emerge from COVID. Some of our adversaries are seeking to undermine and exploit Australia's recovery. We have already seen extremists trying to stoke social divisions and foreign intelligence services wanting intelligence about Australia's key export, technology and research industries. At ASIO, we stand ready to detect and disrupt these threats. Australia's security underpins Australia's recovery. So what is the security outlook? The environment is complex, challenging and changing. The terrorist threat level remains at probable. We have credible intelligence that groups and individuals have the capability and intent to conduct terrorism onshore. So let me be clear, this threat is significant and this threat isn't going away. In addition to the enduring threat from religiously motivated violent extremism is a growing assortment of individuals with ideological grievances. The so-called right-wing extremism has been in ASIO sites for many years, and last year I told you what we'd been seeing. Since then, ideological extremism investigations have grown from around 1/3 of our priority counter-terrorism caseload to around 40%. This reflects both a growing international trend as well as our decision to dedicate more resources to this emerging domestic threat. The face of this threat is also evolving and poses challenges as we seek to identify and monitor it. So people often think we're talking about skinheads with swastika tattoos and jackboots roaming the back streets like extras from Romper Stomper. It's no longer that obvious. Today's ideological extremist is more likely to be motivated by social or economic reasons than National Socialism. More often than not, they're young, well-educated, articulate, middle class, and not easily identified. The average age of our subjects under investigation is 25, and I'm particularly concerned about the number of 15 and 16-year-olds who are being radicalised. They are overwhelmingly male. Investigations into ideological extremism have occurred in all Australian states and territories. Compared to other forms of extremism, it is more widely dispersed across the country, including in regional and rural areas. The extremists are security conscious and adapt their security posture to avoid attention. In their online forums and chat rooms, they show that they're savvy when it comes to what is legal, and they just discuss ways on how they can defeat the system in what they say and do. So ASIO anticipates that the threat from this form of extremism will not diminish anytime soon and may well grow. The online environment is a force multiplier for extremism. It's fertile ground for sharing ideology and spreading propaganda. Ideological extremists are now more reactive to world events, such as COVID-19, Black Lives Matter movement, and the recent American presidential election. COVID has reinforced extremist beliefs and narratives about societal collapse and a race war. As a consequence, we are seeing extremists seeking to acquire weapons for self-defence, as well as stockpiling ammunition and provisions. An ideologically motivated terrorist attack in Australia remains plausible, but most likely it will be from a lone actor or small cell rather than a recognised group, and using a knife and a vehicle rather than sophisticated weapons. But of course, to be clear, even a low capability attack can still result in a loss of life. If we see extremists planning or threatening violence, we and our law enforcement partners take action. At ASIO, we are conscious that the names and labels we use are important. Words matter. They can be very powerful in how you frame an issue and how they cause people to think about issues. So from today, we'll be changing the language we use when we talk about violent threats we counter. We will now refer to two categories: religiously motivated violent extremism and ideologically motivated violent extremism. So why are we making this change? Put simply, the current labels are no longer fit for purpose. They no longer adequately describe the phenomenon we are seeing. We're seeing a growing number of groups and individuals that don't fit into the left or right spectrum at all. Instead, they're motivated by fear of a societal collapse or a specific social or economic grievance or a conspiracy. For example, violent misogynists who adhere to the involuntary celibate or incel ideology fall into this category. So we need to use that language that can accommodate the groups that are outside our traditional categories used. Many of our Five Eyes partners have already changed their terminology for similar reasons. So at ASIO, we will use the two categories of religiously motivated violent extremism and ideologically motivated violent extremism. And of course, I should note, these are umbrella terms, and there may be and will be circumstances where we need to call out a specific threat underneath them. But of course, we think this approach more accurately and flexibly describes security-relevant activities that we focus on. When we're particularly focused on the crest of new world of data, lawfully used, bulk data, modern analytics and machine learning provide us rich opportunities to be more effective and precise, as well as proportionate in how we do our business. But the environment in which we operate is a challenging one. We're seeing and continue seeing an exponential uptake in encrypted and secure communication platforms by extremists. Even unsophisticated targets are routinely using secure messaging apps, virtual private networks, fake emails and number generators to avoid detection. Last year, I revealed that end-to-end encryption damages intelligence coverage in 90% of our priority counter-terrorism caseload. That figure is now 97%. Perhaps at a deeper level, though, there is an essential conundrum in intelligence work. The better you get, the harder it gets. Let me explain what I mean. If we're successful in identifying and disrupting the work of foreign spies or violent extremist groups, they can often reverse engineer what we've done and discover our capabilities. Every time we do our job, we necessarily tip our hand. So what happens then? Our targets bank that knowledge and they change tact. Once they know what we can do, we need to do new things they think are impossible. And that's why we don't talk about our capabilities, and that's why we need to have our laws and capabilities evolve. There is no set and forget in security intelligence. And that's why sometimes ASIO asks for changes to law or investment in new capabilities. We don't do it lightly. We do it because we need to keep technology on our side, not on that of our opponents. For example, last year, the Parliament granted us new laws, allowing us to be more flexible in the use of our less intrusive tracking devices and to compel suspected spies to attend interviews. I can report ASIO has already used one of these powers and will very soon use the other. This is evidence that the evolving threat environment requires evolving capabilities, and we don't ask for new powers and resources unless we need to use them. So as I've explained tonight, the threats facing Australia are significant and constantly evolving. But you should be reassured that ASIO and our partners are still alive to the threats and we're working continuously to evolve to meet them. As a result of our actions over the last 12 months, it is no longer accurate to describe the levels of espionage and foreign interference as unprecedented. Our work has made a material difference to Australia's safety and security. But this isn't a declaration of victory, even less a mission accomplished. As I noted earlier, the better we get, the harder it gets. And the challenges I've laid out tonight are making it more difficult for us to identify and counter these threats. But like the ASIO officers who have come before us, our staff are responding to this challenge with agility and ingenuity, and we are constantly honing our skills and approaches. Spies and terrorists should know this: we're looking for you. For the rest of the Australian community, you should know this: we're looking out for you. ASIO is your security service. Thank you.